This is the Back Porch Education Podcast. Today on the show, Steve and I will discuss what a teacher and or parent is to do when his students just aren't getting it. Enjoy.
Get your education. Back Porch Education.
Good evening, good morning, good afternoon.
Let me guess.
Okay, go for it.
You brought a play to read to us today.
It's not a play, but it is a perfect Shakespearean sonnet.
Well, there you go.
And Shakespeare
By
wrote
Shakespeare?
plays. No, not by Shakespeare.
Let me guess.
Okay.
Mr. Frost, perhaps.
Oh man, it's been one-sided. It's been unbalanced.
Yeah,
but it's getting maybe worse.
Well, you and I had the conversation a while back that we ought to kind of maybe write down all the poems that we've used. We're pushing towards our 100th.
Yeah.
We're a little ways away, but we're getting there. And so I did that project. And I shared it with you.
It was just a Frost anthology.
No,
okay.
I would say a third. Good, strong third or Frost.
Oh, wow.
Now, what shocked me, I thought maybe at the most there were 2 or 3 where you didn't come with a poem.
Yeah.
And I got to eat the crow.
Okay.
I think there's been a good solid half dozen.
Oh, okay.
So there are some that just don't have a poem.
Right.
There's a couple, one by Bono that I brought, etc.
Yeah.
So I got to be careful with the Frost thing. But you do favor him.
I do.
And with good reason. He normally gives us something to think about.
I think so. So, this one, this poem is entitled "The Master Speed," and it is
About drug addiction?
It's not about drug addiction at all. Although, if you let me think on it, there is something addicting about going fast, right?
Oh yeah, for sure.
And Frost does mention that here, right?
Okay.
So, but this is one that I've uncovered fairly recently, and as best I can tell, it was a poem written for his daughter when she was married.
Oh,
yeah.
Sort of a ceremonial poem.
A ceremonial poem. Yeah, I think that's right. She's well, I mean, I don't know when he first read it or whatever, but the sense that I got was. Like the reception itself.
Upon the occasion.
Yeah, exactly. By the power invested in me by the 4 Pulitzer Prizes, I now pronounce you.
Oh, crap.
Okay.
Dad's going to read a poem again. Not that your 3 daughters will have that experience.
Right. No doubt.
You can't use Frost at their wedding. Okay.
Well, it's true. Good deal. Well,
it has to be yours.
Yeah.
It has to be original.
Well, Frost used his, so that's good. Okay. So, the Master Speed. No speed of wind or water rushing by, but you have speed far greater. You can climb back up a stream of radiance to the sky, and back through history, up the stream of time. And you were given this swiftness, not for haste, nor chiefly that you may go where you will, but in the rush of everything to waste, that you may have the power of standing still, off any still or moving thing you say. Two such as you, with such a master speed, cannot be parted, nor be swept away from one another, once you are agreed that life is only life forevermore, together, wing to wing, and oar to oar.
That's a pretty good wedding poem.
He's a pretty good poet.
Yeah. So, the title having been already stated in your intro,
right?
We're taking a poem here about one endowed with quickness, one who gets it quickly,
right?
Fast learner,
right?
and asking, what happens either A, when that is not the case, right? Because even the fastest, most adroit learners hit a bump from time to time.
Yeah.
Or much more commonly, given that this is a exception to the rule, what about that student who either hits a subject that's harder and they aren't sure what to do,
right?
Or just hits that lesson,
right?
Hits that, ooh, I always thought I was a math person until I hit geometry type thing,
sure.
or this specific principle,
right?
That I don't get. So perhaps we start at how do we know that a student isn't getting it?
Yeah, right. Exactly. That's the question. So when I've been in this situation before, and one thing that has been helpful is for me is to say, so I realized, my students aren't getting it, and the first I think good thing that you should do is say very, very clearly what it is. Mm-hmm. If you can't explain to yourself, not to them necessarily, but if you can't explain to yourself very concretely, very definitely what it is that they're not getting, well, then maybe we're beginning to see why they're not getting it, right?
Right.
Defining the scope of the problem, I guess, would be a little bit fancier way to say it. But yeah, you get like sort of drilling down. Okay, it's this. It's polynomials.
Right.
Okay, we can work with that.
Right.
Right.
And and it might even need more, but getting in the right.
Right.
I'll use a mechanic analogy here, but figuring out what part of the car is struggling.
Yeah.
Narrowing it
Exactly.
helps immensely. I had a mechanic one time, the first time I ever visited him, and I had a unique car. I had a 75 Opel Manta.
Okay.
Opel was a French car that was sold to a Japanese company, and this was the first year that it wasn't French but was Japanese.
Oh boy!
So it was weird.
Yeah, sure.
And there weren't. I've never seen another car like it.
Yeah.
And I pulled up.
I'm sorry. I shouldn't go here, but have you Car Talk?
Yeah.
Okay. So their thing that they say. No. Yeah, click and clack. They're one of the things that they say when somebody calls in with a Peugeot, another French car, right? They laugh hysterically at the person, like, "Oh, you idiot," But what they say is the French. No one copies the French, and the French copy no one.
And they both lose.
Right, exactly. It's real weird.
Yeah. So what amazed me was I knew something wasn't right. It was making an odd noise. It wasn't driving correctly.
Right.
And his approach, this fairly young mechanic, who was working out of a single car garage, beat up looking place, but somebody had told me he knows cars very well.
Okay.
Check him out. His prices are reasonable, and I'm a struggling college student.
Right.
He walks up and puts his hand on the front fender of the car, and I start to tell him what's wrong. He gives me the hand.
Yeah.
And just puts his hand on the car and listens and feels. Pop the hood. And I pop the hood for him, and it's here. And I don't even remember what was wrong with it.
Yeah, sure.
Because I'm not a mechanic.
Yeah, exactly.
But he knew, just from listening and feeling. I know. I don't know if it's because he had the problem before, or he understood what that sound was, or what. It doesn't matter.
Exactly.
He was able to narrow it down.
Yep.
And then start working on that part of the car, and at some point go, aha, see, look at here. This is worn out.
Right.
We need to replace that part. And teaching is an art in the same, it's, again, much more like a farm than a factory. We've emphasized this.
Right, exactly.
But a farmer can do similar things.
Yes. Sure.
a diagnosis of a disease in his cow, or put his hand down in the soil and tell you
Yeah.
what's going on. So a teacher needs the diagnostic skill to try and figure out how their art what needs to be done with their art to accomplish the goal they have with that student. I think it's made tougher when it's a bunch of students, because inevitably you've got different speeds.
Yeah. No doubt.
And you got to deal with that. That's probably a different conversation than when a kid is getting it. But I know we want to do at some point some discussion of teaching methodology, maybe on the side porch.
Yeah, it could be.
But to me, there are, in any given art, there's a process to it, and I do think that there are fundamental steps in the learning of something by the human mind, and somewhere in there, it's not working right.
Right.
So whether it's at the level of preparing the mind for whatever concept, it just wasn't properly prepared, and you need to go back and give them more sort of narrative to
priming, right? So sort of
helping direct what they already know towards something they don't yet understand. Or, of course, another major aspect early on is providing their mind with models of what it is that they need to figure out. Often, because of the poem, right?
Yeah.
We have this master speed.
Right.
I already taught this 13 times.
Yep.
Let's keep it going.
Yep.
And you find that they haven't, that you as a teacher haven't. And I don't want to blame it all on the teacher. It could be something within the student as well.
Sure, of course.
But I'm first starting with the artist.
Yep, exactly.
You may not have given them enough models, or they might have been too alike. And so several minds in the classroom got it, but others aren't, because you didn't provide pictures that fit their experience near as well as these given group of people.
Right.
Your notion of them being able to articulate it back to you, to explain it,
right,
is a fundamental principle.
Yeah. And I think too, dissecting it to the point of it being digestible is another big deal, right? Like, am I asking? So the models could be unfamiliar. The models could be too few. But another thing could be just too many moving parts.
Yep.
Right.
Too much analysis.
Right.
You've cut it up into too tiny a part.
Oh, so that's the opposite thing.
Or you haven't cut it up.
Exactly.
The synthesis.
Right.
You already know the parts.
Yeah.
And you failed to help them. Right. Our own knowledge, or our own advancement in our subject, is sometimes our worst enemy.
Yeah.
Right. Especially for an experienced teacher. I've taught this several times before. Surely they'll get it, and that's a real humbling experience when an experienced teacher is suddenly
flummoxed.
What?
Yeah.
I need to reteach this?
Right.
Hey, wait a minute. But it's a necessary. So to me, I feel like we might be a little disjointed here in our conversation. They may not be getting it because of the teacher.
Right.
And that's kind of what I've been articulating. But there's reasons why, on the student side, they may not be getting it yet.
Right.
Some of those would include what?
Oh, well, okay. So if a student is not getting it, then yeah, I would say that either the parts are too big, the parts are too small, the question's not clear.
Sometimes just not enough questions.
Yeah, so, right, exactly.
The teacher's been providing the answers.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's in my own teaching, going through English literature this year, I think that's where I find myself is those dead moments, not the silent moments where we're pondering, which are fewer, but those moments of just everyone's kind of like,
right.
Wait, what?
The battery's gone dead.
Right. Those moments, I find many of them are kind of going back to what you were saying, where I have not articulated the question clearly enough. So, because I'm trying to spin several plates at once,
Yeah.
like, I don't know. I didn't open this book with the idea to have a grammar lesson today. But
Right.
if we need
right.
to have if we need to talk grammar, we can. If we need to talk ideas, we can.
Well, the master speed is not to rush ahead,
Right.
but to give you the ability to stand still.
Right.
And that's a huge line in that.
And that's thinking about your student as they begin to develop that master speed, right? When a horse just begins to run, is learning to run, it looks funny.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it's just awkward. And, oh man, I don't know. I'm really kind of preaching to myself at this point. Like, how much in my teaching do I show them that the skills, the abilities, the ideas, it's not for getting through the book faster.
Right.
It's for being still.
Well, I would go further and say to demonstrate that the teacher is still learning. Right? So, a buddy of mine who had a really good great books type experience in college and went through Euclid's Elements.
Yeah.
That was the math that he took in college, was Euclidean proof every day. Taught math according to the textbook, following the modern methodology.
Sure.
But at lunch, the older students happened to be under his supervision.
Okay.
He had to eat lunch with them.
Yeah.
And so the game began, this was in Louisiana where rain was a constant problem for lunch to keep us inside.
Right.
So he starts throwing a Euclidean proof up on the board
Yeah.
and just having a ball with them, trying to think. They had never seen that. It didn't feel like math to them.
Right.
It felt more like philosophy.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know? And so he was able, I guess what I'm saying is he improved their mathematical mind through exercise that they hadn't been exposed to before.
Right.
It's almost like when they have a football player take ballet.
Yeah. Sure.
Totally different world, and we even kind of, with the little tutu or whatnot, we kind of smile at there's a picture out there of Herschel Walker taking ballet. Right. And everybody's kind of
Sure.
that looks silly. But defensible.
Same body though. It's the same body, right?
And it's coming at the training of one's body
Yeah.
in a different way. Whatever had happened through his typical football training was meeting with good results. But the notion was, what if we turned it on its head? What if we taught a different set of skills? Would that improve his agility, his ability as a running back? And he kept at it long enough to indicate that he saw results from it.
Right.
I think that's a part of it. Sometimes the kid isn't getting it either because they haven't come at it differently, or the teacher, with their lesson plan,
Right.
has said, this is how I'm going to teach it.
Yeah.
And it doesn't always work that way. And so, like you said, I didn't come in today planning to do a grammar lesson, but my expertise in teaching indicates that as I quiz them and as I ask them questions, what they're not getting is, where's the stinking subject and predicate in this sentence?
Right. Exactly.
Back to third grade.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's fine.
The principle there is that you have to figure out where they fell off the track and go back there. Not yell at them from on down the tracks. Well, what's your problem?
Yeah.
Come on. You're getting behind.
Right.
Because then the frustration built into that student
Yep.
is they're going to, fine, I'm just stupid.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a problem. So managing, that isn't that's something that we haven't talked about either. But I think that is another real possibility for why a student may not be getting it. Is sort of turmoil within the student. Certainly within the teacher too. But then the answer to that is like, like pray. Like, but you got to work through your own stuff.
But knowledge of it is incredibly powerful.
Oh yeah, if you're charging around, not aware of it.
I literally got an email this morning from a student saying, I won't be at class today. One of my family members died. And I much prefer that. I mean, there's a lot of questions running around your mind, and I'll figure out what's going on. But at least I've got this, I'm willing to give space to this student.
Oh, of course.
For late work or whatever.
Of course.
It makes sense to me. I had an experience years ago with a straight A. This is a 7th grade girl. Everything is perfect.
Right.
And I go down the row collecting homework, and she doesn't have her homework. And I say, could you not find your kitten? I just don't have it. So that was, I don't know, second, third period. At lunch break, 2 of her friends come to me and say to me, Mr. Elliott, you need to know that so-and-so's house burnt down last night.
Oh my goodness.
And her homework was in it.
Oh my goodness.
But she didn't want to make a whole big thing in class about it. And thus she's just willing to take the 0. I was like, I think I would have, I am, my heart right now.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
like, come on.
Right.
My dog ate it's one thing.
Right.
It burned up in our house fire last night. It's a little bit. So I think that sometimes they're not getting it for things that have nothing to do with how it's been taught or how they have that what's happening in the classroom. Right, there are sometimes extenuating circumstances.
Right,
and that's part of the beauty of the homeschool setting. Is a parent is much more in touch with. Now the other edge of that blade is sometimes the parent is involved in whatever turmoil is going on, and might be too quick to give ground to every piece of drama that might be happening in a, let's say, middle school, high school aged student. So there's wisdom required there.
Definitely.
But the information is important, even if it's not in your mind sufficient enough to constitute backing off. Knowing what's going on is much better than I don't know, they just don't seem to get it.
Yeah.
Which is a very frustrating place for teacher and student.
Yeah, no doubt. And I wonder about when it comes to the different ways that stress manifests. What the best way to work through those. I mean, I'm not trying to launch a whole episode here about managing stress in the student or something, but it seems like there are some distinct kinds of stress, and that they call for different maybe ways, different alleviation methods,
Well, you do a fair amount of tutoring, and I do as well.
Right.
And I've had the experience, a growing experience. It's more pronounced these days than maybe 30 years ago, where I'll start to tutor a student with the assumption, given on what I've seen happening in class, that it's a pedagogical issue. It's a content issue. And so I need to go back over some of the basics about composition or English or history or whatever it is that I'm teaching to them. But I get 5 minutes into it and realize, no. This is like a study skills, intellectual virtue issue.
Right.
They just don't have their stuff together.
Right.
And frankly, that's much easier and these days often much more curative. Right? If nobody's taken the time to talk with them about time management or with strategies.
Right.
We don't take notes anymore, etc. There's a whole laundry list of stuff that it surprises me students even learn anymore in some regards, especially as dependent as they tend to be these days on technology. It's well and fine that you've got all these apps and all this stuff to help you, but we're talking about your mind here.
Exactly.
Right? And at some point you can't lean on all these crutches. You really got to be able to handle the process of thinking yourself instead of being, it's that old thing that our math teachers told us years and years ago, not always going to have a calculator.
Right.
Well, now I do on my cell phone.
Right.
But thank God for the teacher that made it possible for me. I mean, I found myself doing a set of figures on a piece of paper, on my lap, in the car, with a pencil,
right.
And I needed these figures to be accurate.
Yep.
And I was fairly confident that I can still add.
Great.
Even with decimal place. This is a financial thing.
Sure.
That I need to get right, but I know how to carry the one and all
Yeah,
this kind of,
Sure.
Whereas I've run across students, and not just in math, but in any number of academic disciplines. You and I have talked about reading, where some students just stop.
Yeah.
They
get as far as decoding.
Right.
I drag my eyes across the page and I see words, and I group them together in ways that, based on proximity, and then I take a stab at meaning.
Well, I group them together in ways that I think will be on a test.
Yeah.
Right?
Sure.
It's sort of the gold digger type. Mm-hmm. All I care about here is what's going to be on the test.
Right.
And that's a whole subject for us of assessment. But it figures into this discussion. How do you know they're not getting it? Are you certain that you're assessing it properly? Mm-hmm. I would push back against a large, quote unquote, objective or bubble type test for a humanities oriented subject.
Right.
It might fit certain aspects, but it doesn't fit everything.
No, exactly. So this is our talk about tech and that sort of thing uncovered another potential reason or rationale for why a student might not be getting it, and that is, are they having to work a faculty that has been tool aided up to this point, right? So, there are math tests. There are math teachers who allow calculator usage all the time. Okay, whatever. I'm not here to talk about that. But if one of those teachers were to give a test that is very much like the test that he always gives, and then as he's passing it out say, oh, by the way, no calculators, it would be cruel.
Debilitating.
Yeah. It would be like, all of a sudden, what's this out of nowhere? Well, have your students been relying on some tool to aid them up to this point? It could be a calculator. It could be Spark Notes. It could be the stinking red line under the Microsoft Word, right? Like
right, Grammarly and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Like spelling.
Well, I'm sure you know this, but with the mobile devices these days, anything with a camera, you can take a picture of a math problem, and certain apps will solve it for you.
Dude.
Which they were going to come up with anyway.
Yeah.
And I don't even mind that.
No, that's great. Did you get it right?
The burden,
let me check.
The burden is not trying to get rid of or firewall the apps.
No.
The burden is to teach in such a way that they can't Spark Note their way through your literature class or app their way through your math class. That your forms of assessment, your forms of instruction, the activities that are going on in your classroom are real enough that you can't fake your way through.
Yeah.
Right? I know I have students that attempt, with the difficult literature that we read, in fact, some people say this is why you shouldn't read the difficult literature, is it tempts them towards the Spark Notes type of world. But only if I teach in a manner that fits what they get from SparkNotes.
Exactly.
So this is back to your time to stand still, or how deep do you go, or oh, we need a grammar lesson. You can almost immediately tell in a classroom conversation when you're asking them questions with immediate response. Are they obviously trying to look it up on SparkNotes because that's their crutch?
Right.
Or do they have a mind that goes, I'll think about that.
Right.
And then they can start back and forth thinking their way deeply into the text.
Right.
Which is what you want.
Yes.
If
that's what you want.
Right.
Right.
So yeah, the expectation,
Right.
How do you know what is it that you want them to get? Is a pretty stinking important question.
Right. I mean, there are books that I'm like, just SparkNote it. Not books that I teach, but I mean, if anyone said, hey, I really want to read Pamela or Virtue Rewarded by Samuel Richardson, which I read for one of my master's classes, I would say, litcharts.com, my friend. Like, don't, it's not worth the whole read. It's so...
Or at least introduce yourself to it through that.
Yeah.
Right? I had a student ask me about A Farewell to Arms.
There you go.
I'm not a big fan of that book, but I'm not going to put my bias on her.
Yeah.
Rather than, she wanted my recommendation was get a hold of a synopsis or read the back cover.
Yeah.
Or read a chapter. If it's doing it for you, I mean, this is just for pleasure. This is not for an assignment. This is not for, and there's a lot to be talked about there with literature.
Right.
We turn literature into work. It kind of loses something.
Absolutely.
But she was just asking, my mom wants me to read this book. Do you think I'll like it? I said, hey, I'm not totally, I mean, I don't know you that well.
Yeah.
But you're the best judge of that.
Sure.
Skim it. Read a little bit of it.
Yep. Well,
Don't read the last chapter, but
Right.
but read a little bit of it and see if it invites you in. Go on and get in it.
Mm-hmm.
If it kicks you out of its world, okay, nobody's gonna
Right.
shoot you for it.
Right. Exactly.
We don't teach that kind of crap at our
That's funny. Yeah. Yeah. I think there's a lot of potential causes, and solutions.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and I think there's if I can probably be more practical by naming a few things you don't want to do.
Yeah. Okay.
So you got a student that's not getting it. Don't move on.
Absolutely. You stand still. You were given this master speed. You were given this swiftness so that in the rush of everything to waste, you may have the power of standing still.
Yeah. Well, and the rush of everything to waste.
Mm-hmm.
I'm at least hearing, if you keep going, it's useless.
Right. Well, what
The most productive thing is to stop
Yes.
and get it.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you move on, you and I have talked some about my predilection to stay as far away from mathematics as possible.
Mm-hmm.
But I am an educator, and so I watch students hit the wall.
Sure.
And it took me a while to figure it out, but at least my take on the mathematics wall, which is usually pre-cal, certainly calculus,
Yeah.
somewhere up there at that upper end of high school mathematics.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not necessarily convinced that calculus is a high school level subject.
Sure.
But some can handle it.
Yeah.
But there is a wall, and they talk about hitting it.
Mm-hmm.
Algebra 2, pre-cal, somewhere in there.
Right.
And I know it's now all just numbers, but
Yeah.
3 or 4, they hit it.
Yep.
And I believe in part it's because of how we do this whole numeric thing,
Yes.
where you move on from algebra with a 70%, you've passed the class.
Mm-hmm.
And ostensibly are capable of moving, this is the weird thing we do, moving into geometry, from the Arabs to the Greeks.
Right.
That's an easy move.
Yeah.
And then back to the Arabic algebra.
Right.
Two, and if we keep allowing them to get most of it, this is our point.
Right.
Not to get all of it, but
Right.
to get most of it. To not necessarily master, but get enough that we feel justified in passing them along.
Mm-hmm.
The accumulating gaps,
Yeah.
blanks, pieces of it. Let's just go with the 70%. If every year 30% of it wasn't gotten,
Right.
there's a point at which that's a big chunk of stuff,
Absolutely.
and you hit the wall. Because it is, mathematics does move up through complexities that are built upon foundational principles below them. And just like in building a house or whatnot. If
That's the metaphor that I thought of, actually, is more in math, I think, than in some of the other subjects.
math and language is the two that I just...
Right. Like you have a certain amount of material, and that would be the student's knowledge, say. So if you are running low on material, you build a smaller house.
Yes. That's a great analogy.
Right? You don't just say, this house doesn't need any
Hang it.
walls.
Yeah.
We'll have the bathroom just sitting right out here.
2/3 of a wall on the bathroom is sufficient.
Right.
As long as it's the bottom 2/3. Right. A little cold in the winter.
Right.
But yeah, no, we do this. And so stopping or being honest is a big deal. Knowing that you know what it is that they don't get.
Yeah.
Not lying to yourself. They'll cover that next year.
Yeah. Or they should have covered it last year.
Or so and right there, I'm guilty of this from time to time, but I certainly see colleagues who do this as well. Well, they should have got it.
Sure. Okay. Cool. Great.
And they move on.
Yeah.
It's the child's laziness. It's their fault.
Right.
Who's the adult?
Yeah, exactly. It's like, well, I should have not eaten that second donut today. While we're talking about shoulds.
Right, and the multifactorial thing that we've already discussed, of why they didn't get it. You know, if you find yourself as a teacher or a parent just constantly, they're just lazy, or they're just not trying, or it's their character.
Right.
Maybe this form of education is not for them. You know,
Good point.
maybe they're not college material.
Right.
Maybe you're moving too fast for them. Maybe what you call laziness is a lack of the skills necessary to do the thing. I don't know how many times you were describing it earlier. A student is assigned something they're not ready to do. Mm-hmm. Right. And that's what I see this all the time in writing. They're invited to write, especially with the introduction of creative writing so early.
Yeah.
A third grader is not ready to write creatively.
Sure.
And I know that's a controversial statement.
Sure.
But I would defend it as a teacher of writing and saying that they don't have the foundations of their writing house laid yet. Mm-hmm. And you're asking them to erect a roof.
Yes.
Without any foundations or I don't know my architectural terms, but
truss,
the supporting
yeah.
pillars, the floor, a load-bearing wall. That's what I'm saying.
Wall.
They don't have any walls.
Right.
And so you're going to try and put this roof on a wallless house, and it's just going to go boom.
Right.
And well, I just can't write. Oh, what a crime.
Yeah.
You might be a great writer once you learn your craft.
Yeah.
Right. And to put the burden of creativity, which is the ultimate
that's the
burden
pinnacle,
of,
right?
of any art, on a somewhat artless little kid.
Yeah.
Oh, I just can't do it. That's a lifetime.
Yeah.
Much better to playing the piano, run through those scales, in the writing, paragraph after paragraph after paragraph, and that's a thing as well, right? Is the size of some of these assignments. This goes back to your stress thing. Sometimes they're not getting it because we're throwing so much at them.
Yeah.
Simplify, slow down.
Simplify. Mm-hmm. And ask yourself, maybe another thought here is, ask yourself how necessary it is, even in the first place, right? Well, they're not getting it. Now I'm just going to move on. Okay. Then why did you stop? Right? Like, was it... I'm not saying never, ever, ever move on. And I'm not saying never stop for anything that isn't completely necessary. I don't think either of those are education.
Right.
I think both of those will drive you absolutely bonkers.
Well, I got a great story on that.
Okay, let's hear it.
I worked for a little while at a textbook, educational textbook publishing company.
Okay.
And some of the most fascinating entertainment in that job was lunchtime. I'd be down in the break room eating lunch, and 2 or 3 of these young ladies whose job was working on the 800 helpline
Okay.
would start to, I got a winner today.
Oh boy.
Well, I walked in one time and it was just the 2 girls and myself, and so I was kind of front and center. I got this story pretty straight.
Yeah.
The one is telling the other, she was on page 50, 54 and 55. I always get confused as to which it is.
Yeah.
But 2 facing pages of the chemistry textbook. And I got to that 2 pages to help her, and it's the periodic table of the elements.
Okay.
And the lady's like, my kid can't get this. I need more information. What do you mean he can't get it? Now, I've tried 100 different ways to get him to memorize this thing, and he can't memorize this chart. It's just too much information. And it's March. And we've been working on this sucker since September.
Oh.
And she's like, ma'am, I'm a chemist. And I don't have it memorized. I'm pretty familiar with it.
Sure.
I can often pull it out of some parts of it.
Right. I know all the noble gases.
Yeah. But I got a big old periodic table up on my wall.
Right.
I don't need to memorize it. I got it.
Right.
It's there available. It's time to move on.
Wow.
So
If you're out there now, please, please send us something on Facebook of all the stuff you remember.
A 10th grader in 1985 would now be...
Oh, wow.
Yeah. But
I meant sir. I was born in 88, so...
we do these crazy things for various reasons as teachers.
Yeah.
And I think the sensitivity... The most important aspect is the question itself. Recognizing you got a kid that doesn't get it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a pretty important thing right there. Many teachers, I got the lesson plan, or I've got the curriculum, or this is my, we put this into recording. This is one of my difficulties with high school students taking AP courses.
Yeah.
Is it's a college course.
Right.
Brought down to a much lower maturity level. I'm not going to say age.
Yeah.
I'm going to say maturity level. Some of my high school students can handle an AP course. They're that mature.
No doubt.
But many of them haven't learned how to drink from a fire hose yet.
Mm-hmm.
And AP is set up in such a way as to demand...
There's no time for anything else.
Right, you have to teach it in a certain way. And you don't have time to stop.
No.
That's the biggest problem I have with it.
Right.
Is you hit something... I taught AP U.S. history for a number of years.
Wow.
And you hit something that this particular group just isn't... I got to move on.
Right.
So then I'm shoving resources at them. Read this.
Right.
Watch this video. There's this helpful series on Discover or whatever. And that's not teaching in the same way. I mean, it's used. That's what would happen to you in college.
Yeah.
But that's because a college student would be much more of an autodidact than a junior.
Well, and we've drifted, right? What wisdom are you cultivating? Yeah. What virtue are you cultivating?
Yeah.
The virtue of diligence. Okay.
Yeah.
That's something. I'm not unsympathetic to hard work in the classroom. There's something there, but yeah, by and large, it gets pretty tough to course correct, right? If there is no room.
Well, that old movie about Jaime Escalante, who was doing AP Cal in the barrios of Los Angeles. What does he do? He goes to volunteer. Well, but he goes to volunteer time. You're going to have to come in early before school.
Exactly.
We're going to work on Saturdays. This AP curriculum has. He will conquer it. He believes that these kids need to see that they can do college work, because most of them just didn't have any faith in themselves to be able to do it.
Right.
I applaud the extra effort, but back
That's
to
what it
your
took.
stressor, back to your anxiety and your stress.
Mm-hmm.
Does a 10th, 11th grader need to be trying to perform at the same level as somebody a couple years ahead of him? It's a question, but if you find yourself in a situation where you can't deal with a student who doesn't get it, there's some sort of a systemic problem there. I think you need to pull your admin into, or if you're in homeschool, you are the admin, right? But in a school setting, you've got to be talking to somebody because you care,
Yep.
right? I'm very uncomfortable leaving a child or this portion of my class in the dust. I know you want me to get to X, Y, and Z, but what if I do half of X, all of Y, and as much Z as we can? What? How can we get it to where it's real education and not just sort of an act?
Yeah. Right. I'm continually. I think the lesson that I've learned this year in my teaching is margin. You gotta have margin.
Yep. Well, back to the farming principles there's no margin in a factory.
Exactly.
In fact, margin is waste.
They said, dude, what is it? The rush of everything to waste.
Yep.
Right. So to plow up those, take out those fences, right, and plow everything.
Yep.
It's a.
And then scratch your head as to
runoff.
In the farm,
Right.
why isn't this working? It's not getting it.
Right.
And in education, it's the exact same. I've streamlined, I've pushed, I've rushed, I've done everything right, and they're not getting it. And I think margins is a bit. That's a whole podcast.
Yeah.
What is meant by margins and what's going back to that farm analogy and this mysterious thing that if you farm right up to the edge of everything, you won't have as good a crops as leaving margins between your. It's just.
I know. It's
a bizarre and beautiful thing.
It is. It's berry, Wendell-berry.
Yeah.
It's peeper. It's the Hebrew scriptures where God tells his people to leave the corners of the field.
Yeah.
It's a lot. There's a lot there. So, well, I think as usual we
still don't get
identified some problems, offered a few solutions, and had some good questions along the way. I'll be thinking on these.
And listener, please join in the conversation. Make comments. We love it when you do.
Get your education. Backwoods education. You can't have your meat if you don't eat your vegetables.